Okay, this video is what causes disease, and I'm going to compare the perspective of healthcare versus reality. So what I'm saying here basically is, my kids have gotten older, they're grown up, I sit around, I don't got much to do, and I just go through all the medical textbooks, and what I found out is they're all wrong. Entire medical school is based on internal medicine, and I can tell you this with complete confidence. The internal medicine textbooks and the biochemistry textbooks, they're completely wrong. They're a joke. Okay, so let's look at what they say. The standard medical textbooks for almost all of the chronic diseases, and I'm talking about things like obesity, diabetes, atherosclerosis, hypertension, the most important diseases. Hypertension, obesity, hypertension, and diabetes are the gateway diseases that cause most of the other problems. Okay? All right, so first of all, they say it's due to aging, associated with aging. Okay, fine. Then they say, well, some of it seems to be partly genetic. Okay, fine. Then they say, sometimes, it might be a virus. Okay. And then they say, oh, it's socioeconomic factors and disparities and racism and, those evil people, things like that. Okay, then the next thing they say, well, the weather change is causing these storms and a lot of people have died in these storms, okay? And there's, what a lot of times, sometimes that might be. Okay, the next thing is drugs of abuse, alcohol, tobacco, MJ, and more recently, opioids. Okay, fine. There is some truth in all of this, but you're going to see a pattern here in just a moment. Oh, then, of course, the other ones are the Butler did it or the Russians did it. Okay, and so anyways, what's my point? My point is if you look at these things, these are all things that are carefully selected to say, look, there's nothing you could do. There's nothing you could do about any of those things. All you can do is buy the pill or the surgery or the lab test or imaging test that the healthcare system is selling, the bean counter is selling. And so what I want to show you is a more important way to look at health. And the point is, most of these things, you can change them. Excess animal foods, they're full of fat, they're full of, they don't have any fiber, they're full of animal protein, all this stuff is toxic to your body. And it's real easy to not eat those. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do think animal foods have a place. I'm 100% vegan, but animal foods helped our ancestors to get through the winter when they had no other food. So they're good to have available as a backup food in terms of the winter, all right? But I wouldn't eat any animal foods at all if you have a choice and you have plenty of plant foods available, okay? Because they just end up plugging up your arteries, making you sick. Okay, excessive and the lack of dietary fiber, that messes up your gut, that makes your blood prothrombotic, it opens up your blood-brain barrier, and that makes you stupid. Okay, excessive stress, sleep deprivation, and caffeine. They all increase cortisol and catecholamines. That mimics your stress response, and that leads to overeating when you're chronically stressed. So that makes you fat. Cortisol is like, Cushing syndrome, the big fat belly, the buffalo hump, obesity with the shoulders, etc. Sedentary, a lack of exercise. A lack of sunshine for your vitamin D. A lack of social support, family support, friendships, having a purpose in your life, having religion. Religious people are much healthier. So what I'm trying to say is that you'll notice every single one of these things is completely under your control. The most important one is diet. And you've heard Dr. McDougall say it's the food. Yeah, the food's the most important thing, but these other things are important too. Excessive estrogenics. There's tons of estrogenics in processed food, in animal foods, in personal care products, in tap water if it's not filtered. Excessive toxins in the food. Now, this is not widely recognized, but it's a big deal. They put lots of stuff in the food. The GMO corn is sprayed with atrazine. It's a mitochondrial inhibitor. It's an estrogenic. And things that are estrogenic are going to predispose to obesity. They've been described in some cases as obesogens to make you fat. Okay, and other toxins in the processed food, things like aspartame, those are excitotoxins for the brain, so I would call those dementogens, okay? And there's a real good researcher, I think it was Seralini, who said 80% of estrogenic chemicals are also neurotoxic, so they really should be described as being estrogenic and neurotoxic. Okay, abuse drugs, like we just talked about over here. Yeah, it's true, those are real bad for you. Alcohol, tobacco, MJ, and opioids are the most common ones. But what they don't say is prescription drugs. Prescription drugs, I've heard different people put them in different categories, but I've heard them to be described as common as the third most common or second most common cause of death. That's from the medicine people's taken. And what I'm saying is basically your hypertension and your type 2 diabetes, most likely, not everybody, it depends how long you've had it, how bad it is, but for most people, just stop eating the high-fat foods and the animal foods, and you'll cure your hypertension, you'll cure your type 2 diabetes. Instead, they'll take all these drugs, and these drugs, these overtreatment of hypertension is really common. They make people dizzy, they fall down, they hit their heads. I cannot tell you how many thousands of times in my life I've seen patient histories that say patient fell, hit head on blood thinners. Okay, all that stuff goes together. Why are they on blood thinners? Because they've got some type of atherosclerosis related disease, atrial fibrillation, previous stroke, coronary artery disease, status post coronary artery stent. And if they had been low fat vegan in the first place, they never would have got coronary artery disease. They never would have been hypertensive. They never would have been diabetic. They never would have had to go into hypertensive medicine. So they never would have been lightheaded and dizzy and fallen down and hit their head while they're on blood thinners. Okay. So prescription drugs are much, much, much more toxic than people realize. And most of them, you don't even need them if you just eat the healthy diet, get a little exercise, get your sleep, manage your stress. So anyways, I just wanted the key point of all this, why did I even make this video? To show you that the system's designed to take your power away from you and say you must depend on its pills. Man, it's yield to the pill and send a bill. That's how the system makes most of its money, the majority of its money. Versus in reality, you can control these things. Just take charge of your own health, and you can really dramatically improve your health. You can't change your age. You can't change your genetics, but they're relatively minor. I mean, aging is a big deal. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you, but let it catch up with you when you're elderly and you lived a good long life and when your brain's intact, rather than the typical, American get in the dwindles when they hit their late 40s and just going down, down, down. Like I said, I got internal medicine friends say every single one of their patients over 60 is cognitively slow. And in my experience, it's the most of them. Lots of Americans become cognitively slow after about 55 years of age. And I'm seeing more demented females. I used to see mostly demented men at a young age from hypertension, for example, but I'm seeing a lot more demented women these days, also at young ages, for all the reasons I talked about, obesity, hypertension, hysterectomies, etc. So anyways, hope this was helpful.